Welcome to Shallow, one podcast, two time zones, diving deep into a new topic every week. From pop culture to beauty and wellness trends, careers and ambitions, these conversations flood our WhatsApp inboxes and social media feeds. Dialing in from Sydney, Australia and London, UK, we're asking the same question. Is it really that deep?
The shallow take, fashion is frivolous. But the reality is, it's so much deeper than that. This multi-billion-dollar industry is anything but surface level. Fashion shapes how we see ourselves and how others see us. It's culture, it's politics, it's identity, and it's often one of the first ways we learn to express who we are. Sounds powerful, right? But at what cost?
From the outside, fashion can feel fun, creative, and even luxurious, but behind every piece is a story of labour, logistics, and a global supply chain that's often murky and anything but glamorous. Today, we're joined by Christine Lindebak to dive into the fashion industry.
Christine is a true multi-hyphenate entrepreneur. She fell in love with sewing at 6 years old, launching her career at Emilio Pucci in New York City, and eventually going on to carve out her own space in the industry. Now based in Spain, Christine runs her own business, designs for her clothing brand, and consults on digital marketing. Through her platform, Sewing in the City, she's working to reshape what fashion can be. More ethical, more inclusive, more creative. We're talking behind the scenes of the fashion industry, what it takes to build your own fashion brand, and how Christine is making space for a different kind of fashion future. Let's dive in.
Christine, welcome to Shallow. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really happy to have you on the podcast. First of all, we just want to ask how you are today. How's it been going? What have you been up to? We usually do a bit of a rec at the beginning of an episode. You know, it could be a book or a TV show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat today. Everything is going good. It's so hot here in Spain. And we had a bit of a heat wave. And when I went to turn on my air conditioning the first time, it wouldn't blow cold air. And so I have been sweltering and waiting. It took 4 weeks for the repair guy to make his way here because he was so busy. But I have air conditioning, so I am super excited. It changes everything.
Yeah, I mean, all I can do is be jealous because in the UK, there's no such thing as air conditioning. I mean, if you go into a shop, there might be some air conditioning if you're lucky. I think that's the main take. All we've got here is fans that circulate hot air. So when everyone talks about an aircon, I'm like, oh my God, what is this heavenly item that I don't have? And Phoebe knows, I mean, Phoebe's in Australia and they're aircon city over there.
Aircon is next level here.
Next level good, yes.
Exactly. I mean, you're not from Valencia though, are you?
No, so I'm originally from the US. I was born in Seattle. And so Seattle is very much like the UK, I think, as far as we don't really have air conditioning there. But there is a month, maybe the month of August, where you kind of wish that you had it. But yeah, so Valencia, this kind of heat is a little bit different for me. But ultimately, I love it. It changes, throughout the year. So it's you get kind of all the seasons.
Yeah, I think that's the British mindset as well. We constantly complain about how hot it is. But when it's not hot and when the sun is not shining, we're like, this is ridiculous. It can't be any more rain. We can't have any more clouds. This is awful. I mean, British people, we love to talk about the weather. I mean, it's such a stereotype of us. So It is quite fitting that we would talk about this at the top of the episode. Just to kick things off, I think, we should just go back to the beginning, really. And firstly, just talk about a moment, when fashion maybe, first felt like something that was just, more than clothes to you. Maybe a time when you realised it could be a way of expressing yourself or, even something you wanted to build your life around.
Yeah. So there was one really potent moment, and it was later on in my life, and I think it was kind of a culmination of just building to that. And it was when I had first moved to New York. I had born in Seattle, and then I had lived in LA for work, for fashion, and then I had moved to New York for another job. And I was walking in the West Village, and it was the first time ever in my life that I felt this feeling of I can wear whatever I want and no one will judge me. And it was such a freeing feeling that just it didn't matter. Like, and it's almost like the more you express yourself, the more you really wear something that is unique and a true expression of who you are, the more it was like accepted or celebrated or totally okay. And so I think for me that really stands as like such a powerful moment where I really got into like expressing myself through clothes. But I think I had always been kind of doing it, just not really being so conscious of that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of similar to when people kind of move to London. I mean, I'm from East Yorkshire, which is like the north of England, and, from a very small city. And I moved to London in 2020, but I'd moved to Liverpool before that. And I think when you do come to a massive, capital city like London, like New York, there's so many different cultures, there's so many different people with their own styles, their own ways of thinking, that you don't feel like you stand out anymore. Or if there was something that you did that you thought that was a bit quirky and out there, there's absolutely no way people are thinking that in London, because there's always someone that's outdoing you in some way. So yeah, I completely get that.
It's such a great feeling. It's so freeing. And I think it really is a bit of more of a mindset. If you can take that same mindset with you wherever you go, and just not really care what people think. Or half the time we think people are judging us, but they're probably thinking about their own outfit or their own problems that they have. So just like really freeing when it comes to style and fashion and expressing ourselves.
100%. I think going to that time of your life when you were in New York, walking through the West Village, you've kind of moved from LA to NY. What was that transition like, kind of personally and professionally? I think, when we were thinking about this episode, in my mind, it was like Sex and the City, Devil Wears Prada. What was the real experience of that kind of early days of working in fashion in New York?
Yes. Oh my gosh, the early days. Someone once told me that New York will test you a little bit when you first move, and it really did happen. I was from had lived in LA for 5 years. So for me, boots, like winter boots, were a just to the knee stiletto boot. Like that was my boot. And it had just, the first snow had come and I was on my way to a meeting. And so I was like, okay, it's snowing. I'm going to put on my boots. So my, stiletto boots, and it was so slippery. I literally fell on my, on my knees. I like scraped my, my wrist and everything. And it was like that moment where New York kind of gives you a little bit of a kick and toughens you up. And, especially coming from LA, where everything is pretty cushy, sunny, there's no snow. So that was one of the first experiences that really like, okay, this is New York. The other thing that happened to me was just the scale of the city. So in Seattle or even in LA, we would, if you're going to a store or someone's house, it's like, oh, you take a left and it's the second house, on the right or whatever, or it's between this street and this street. You'll see people, whatever. And I had gotten an invite to an event in New York, and it was on Fifth Avenue between like 57th and 58th, something like that. And that was the only address I had in my mind. And I'm thinking from my LA mentality, oh, I'll find it. It's just between these two streets. And I had brought my friend Adam with me. We were all, dressed and ready. And it was like the biggest Fifth Avenue, like huge street. It was even before it was like in 2009. And so even cell phones weren't super, you couldn't, it's like I had to go on my BlackBerry, find the email, download it. And it was just like, oh my gosh,
no Google Maps.
Yeah. Like we're not in the West Coast anymore. We're in New York.
What happened to those boots? I need to know. Did you wear them again?
Oh yeah, I definitely wore them again. They were brown leather Escada. Beautiful boots, and I definitely wore them again, but not in the snow.
So you kind of enjoying New York, I assume, at this point. It's toughening you up a little bit. The boots are getting a bit ragged in the snow. How does it feel kind of in the industry itself at this point? You've kind of landed this, what I assume to be quite a dream job. I mean, Emilio Pucci, New York, say no more. How is it starting to feel being on the inside of the industry at that stage in your career?
Yeah. So one of the things that I do remember, it's very image conscious. A lot of brands will hire, one of the kind of the check boxes is, they'll you have a certain image, but that's really just the exterior part. Like that's like the first, the first door to pass through. But then on the inside, there's a lot of pressure. So every day, literally every day, you come into work and we get a full report of what did we sell last year on this day. So comparing last year numbers to this, what do we need to do today on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, and a yearly basis. So there's a lot of pressure, and with that pressure, there's certain dynamics. So for me, I was director of retail, overseeing 5 stores in the U.S. So our whole retail division in the US. And so I had my own boss, the vice president, HR person, marketing person, buyer. So we're part of this team. And everyone kind of has their own role to play in that. So it's very much a dynamic that is quite high pressure and focused on driving the numbers.
That's so interesting, because I think that is a side of it that you just, it being external to the fashion industry, you forget about. But obviously it's a business, it's an industry. Of course, that stuff is important. Did you get to a stage where that pressure started to become too much, or you noticed sides of it that you were like, actually, this wasn't quite what I'd hoped for? Or was it all quite smooth sailing for you?
Yeah, definitely not smooth sailing. The pressure for me, I think I ultimately handled it well, but there was a point where I totally burnt out, like physically. I started having these undiagnosed allergy attacks. So my body was like literally saying like, something's wrong here, like stop. So physically, ultimately, I did suffer from some burnout, but just the kind of behind the curtain in the industry. Like, for example, we had a huge, massive warehouse, and most of the luxury brands do. Like, everyone kind of had their own section of this just gigantic warehouse where all of the old stock that wasn't sold would go to, and they would just store it for years. Then we would do different sales, but it was just like every season there was this massive amount of clothing that was unsold. And they would just, go, I don't know, maybe it was like an hour outside of the city, and just it all would get stored. And every season more and more and more would get stored there. And this is every single brand that you see on the luxury streets, with just a lot, like more than you could ever imagine of unsold merchandise.
Yeah, that's crazy, because you imagine like these more like designer brands, and they bring out this very specific line, and you don't think about how much stuff and content and things that are created to get to that, and then where does that all go? And yeah, just that kind of like overconsumption and over producing of these things that are then just put into storage, and then what happens when those warehouses become full? Do they just hire another warehouse? Or what do they do with the stock?
Yeah, for us, it was a constant more. And we would do employee sample sales every once in a while to help get rid of some of it. So I think for luxury, and also luxury does hold its value. So I think that I've been able to sell pieces that I no longer wear from my past, like suits and things that are just they're not in my lifestyle anymore. And there are sites like the Real that you can sell luxury items, but I And so I think for luxury, it's not such an urgent problem, although just seeing it at scale is really impactful. But what I wonder is what happens on the fast fashion level. So where we would get new collections every season, so 4 times a year, you go to Zara, they have new pieces pretty much every day, I think, at least every week. They're getting massive deliveries. And when you think about the percentage, even if 10% of those clothes are not sold, that's a massive amount of clothing. And I'm not sure what the fast fashion what they're doing with the extra clothing, but it is a massive overbuying, overconsumption, overproduction problem that is really just kind of like scooted away. Yeah.
Yeah, I was literally just about to say, as you were talking, this is it, high-end luxury goods, what's happening to the fast fashion lines that are literally churn and burn? Like, where is all of that going?
I was just gonna say that the fast fashion and sustainability thing, I'm super interested. I want to like dive into that more. I just really wanted to touch on what you said about kind of burning out and the way that your physical body was kind of manifesting in a way that was just really unhealthy for you. And I just wanted to just talk about that a little bit, because I mean, myself and Phoebe, we kind of started this podcast just through kind of talking about respective similar kind of health issues, either brought on by, you know, our environment or our workplace. I mean, I work in the film and TV industry, and similar to the fashion industry, it's this kind of high, fast-paced industry, and Phoebe is similar in marketing. And I wonder whether this is a very kind of like similar gradient in terms of like from people that I've spoken to, and especially with their body physically manifesting things. I mean, I've dealt myself with, you know, bouts of like hair loss and skin issues and things like that. So I just wanted to kind of you know, if you're comfortable, just dive into that a little bit more and how that kind of has, you know, propelled, I mean, the next step in your career.
It 100% propelled the next step in my career, because at some point I knew that I couldn't move forward. It was, I had a very strong intuitive calling and a knowing that I couldn't continue anymore. But it took me a good like year and a half of just like going to different doctors and kind of managing the symptoms before I really realized and listened to that voice that was like, stop. So I think what was happening is I was in like an adrenal burnout. So just kind of living in this state of high stress through my career, you know, always, it's very competitive. Like, these are really competitive industries that we're all in. You know, there's always someone else new, like coming in, and you're always kind of, there's a little bit of just pressure on, you know, on maintaining your level of productivity and bringing the numbers in, you know, beating last year's numbers and all of that. And paired with living in New York, where your rent goes up a certain percent every year. Like 1 year over the next, my rent for the same apartment went up $300. And that was like in, you know, 2000, that was like early 2010s, like that time. So I'm sure it's worse now. And so you're always thinking, like, I need to get a promotion. I certainly can't lose my job, because that would be devastating. So there's just this like hum of pressure. And I think after a while, I didn't know how to come down off of that stress level. I just was like there all the time, and it burned out my physical body. And I think also just kind of knowing I had achieved everything I wanted to achieve with that career, but I didn't quite know what the next door was going to be. And so I was sort of fighting my intuition as well at the same time.
For sure. I think that story is going to resonate with so many people. What was your like fuck it moment? Like, when were you like, I cannot do this anymore? Like, was there a key point that you remember, or was it just that accumulation?
Yeah, I think, well, I would say, I don't know that there was like ever one solid moment, but I was traveling to Italy several times a year for market trainings and whatnot. So I had gone to Italy, and on the way back, I decided to take a stopover on one of the Canary Islands, Lanzarote, for just like 2 or 3 days, like a little stopover to rest. Like I was like, oh, just taking it where I could. And it was on that trip that it was like instantly I met a bunch of friends. I went to a yoga class on the beach and met all these local friends who were, just like-minded people. And there was just something about the culture that I knew I needed to be there. And so it was more like a moment of clarity, I think. And I always kind of knew I wanted to live in Europe. I'm traveling there for work, and I was studying Italian. And so my life was kind of working in that direction, even though maybe I wasn't like super conscious of it. And a year after that trip, I ended up moving. So I took a year to like prepare and learn Spanish and, figure out what I was going to do next. So that was really like the moment of clarity. And then I had a direction and was able to work towards it.
Yes, it's interesting that you say that because I feel like I'm on a kind of similar journey in terms of like Phoebe's in Sydney, and I went and visited her for like almost like a trial month last year, and it's kind of this thing of it's almost like you're breaking away from this life that you've kind of built up, but is stressing you out or is causing you health problems. But it's not, it's not just an overnight thing where you can just be like, okay, tomorrow that's it, I'm moving to Spain or I'm moving to Sydney. But yeah, I think that this is a really good segue into talking about your business, Sewing in the City, and how that kind of came about, and what is Sewing in the City.
So when during that year, when I was trying to, figure out how I was going to make everything work, I knew, well, I made three kind of like 3 points that I really wanted to create in my next role or whatever I was going to do next. One is I wanted to stay with one foot in the creative, at least fashion industry, at least creative. I knew I needed to do something in the creative world. Second, I didn't want to have a cap on my income potential. So I really wanted to be able to be in control of that and not just have a salary. And then the third was I wanted to be able to be location independent. So I didn't want to have to be in New York or have to be in Seattle or really anywhere. And so those three things in the interim, I had started Sewing in the City like in 2013 because I had always been sewing. And so I even in my little tiny New York apartments, I had my sewing machine set up. And so I was blogging on WordPress about the things I was making. So I kind of knew my way around websites and tech. And so I decided that was going to be what I would be able to do remotely, creatively, without earning cap. And so I studied WordPress more formally during that year of transition. And so that's what I did for the first couple of years when I moved to Spain, was I was building websites for people. And, I loved it. It gave me all the flexibility. And at some point, I was working for a lot of these like really great creative people that were doing what they love. And I had this moment of like, why am I not doing this for myself? And that's when I started, or kind of relaunched Sewing in the City, but this time I was monetizing it. So before I was just really blogging, just for the fun of it. And thank goodness I did, because it got me familiar enough with tech that opened the door that I could do that for a living, for a way to make money. And then so with Sewing in the City, I was able to build everything myself. So I started with a Learn to Sew course. So Sewing in the City is my overall brand. I sell sewing courses, so different sewing skills. I sell PDF sewing patterns. So you can buy a pattern, print it out, and then make your own version of whatever the pattern is, whether it's a blouse or pants or coat. And so, yeah, that was how Sewing in the City actually got started. I just kind of returned back to what I loved doing when I was, 9 years old, before money even came into the equation.
I love that so much. It's clearly been such a through line in your life. I think it's something that my mum tried to get me into, and I was just so awful. I've still got my sewing machine somewhere. But I love the WordPress mention of the OG blogging days. Like, I feel like if we knew what that was going to turn into, I mean, it set you up for success in a way you probably didn't even imagine it would down the line. Going into kind of home sewing, what do you think kind of sewing culture is doing for fashion today? Obviously, you touched on the ethical side of fashion, or the lack of ethics in fashion. Is this kind of like your answer to that? You feel like this could really assist the fashion industry if more people adopted this kind of sewing, mending, darning?
Yeah, I think it is a kind of a quiet rebellion. And maybe it didn't start that way because I've always been sewing my whole life. So I don't really remember a time when I didn't sew. But I think really what sewing and mending and being able to repurpose or refashion things is just giving people other options. So the only option, if you want to express your own style or dress in a certain way, you don't have to go to fast fashion. You don't have to go to the department store or the mall to buy something. And you can take either things that you buy at the thrift store, refashion them, take like a sheet, like this dress that I'm wearing is literally a sheet, a top sheet or a duvet cover, I think, that I got at the thrift store, and I turned it into a dress, and I absolutely love this dress. I wear it so much, more than probably I should, because I just really love it. So it gives people other options other than having to buy something new.
And I feel like it makes you kind of like reconnect with your clothes, right? Like I feel like if you make your own pieces of clothing, you're gonna wear them more, like you said, because you've found a fabric that you're like in love with. Then you fitted it to how you like a dress to fit you, and then therefore you're gonna wear it 10 times more than something that you maybe had a half-hearted opinion on in a fashion store that you brought home, and is kind of, you've maybe worn it once or twice. Like, you kind of appreciate it. You appreciate that you put that time into it and that effort into it, and you've kind of produced it. And I think, I'm sure you agree that you don't see behind the curtain very much of how like these fast fashion brands produce their clothes and how unethical it is. And yeah, just knowing that you've done that and you've made that through vintage fabric, or reclaimed fabric from a thrift store, or and it's just really inspiring, and it's making me really want to make my own clothes.
Yeah, I'm totally here for it. Totally.
I was literally gonna say, actually, it gives you such a respect for the people making your clothes as well, and also it's a double-edged sword, because it gives you a huge respect when you realize actually the craftsmanship and the work and the artistry that goes into it. But then also when you see the price it's reduced to in fast fashion, and how it's not built to last, and the sequins, especially like when Christmas rolls around and everything's sequined, and I think about the work that's gone into that, and not to be too negative, but how much those guys must have been paid to create that garment as well. I think I love what you're doing with Sewing in the City, because it's showing people that it is a craft again. It's not something that belongs in a bin.
Yes, exactly. And Lucy, back to your point too about the connection to the clothes. It's like it connects you back to the process. And I think like when I would buy something at a fast fashion, it's quick, it's easy, it's relatively inexpensive. And it's like easy come, easy go kind of thing. Like you wear it, and a thread starts to come out of the hem, and you pull it and the whole hem rips out, stuff like that. And when you make your own clothes, you're connected to like, oh, I bought the fabric. I looked for the pattern that I wanted to make out of it. I threaded the machine. I pressed it and took the time to assemble the garment. You have more of a connection to it.
It's so much more special, I think. Yeah. And It makes me think of, like around times where you're invited to parties and they have a theme. I think my instant reaction is like, oh my God, I need to go out and buy something and create this outfit. And I don't know oh, I'm going to have to go here and I'm going to have to look online and get a really quick outfit to put together. And I think, yeah, there's this kind of like use and consume and like get rid of at the end of kind of every single one of these events. I mean, I'm bad for it. I've done it in the past, and I've looked at those items in my wardrobe like a year later and thought, what did I even buy that for? Was that just for that, that event on that Saturday? And why? I don't even like it. What am I going to do with it now? And then, yeah, you give it to a charity shop, but the clothes are not high quality enough. They're just going to fall apart anyway. So, yeah, I think it's so important to, whether that's, making your own clothes and putting your soul into it, or, finding pieces that really resonate with you that kind of almost create like a capsule wardrobe, right? And that's another way of sustainability in fashion. Do you think that this kind of like hands-on approach of making your own clothes can actually shift this industry? Or do you think it's more about reclaiming fashion on more of a personal level, like I just said, with the kind of adopting different habits and not doing bad things like buying from Shein or Zara or things like that?
I mean, I think I would like to think that we could really make an impact. And I do see every time I open Instagram, I see new people, learning to sew. Oh, I'm learning to sew. I learned to sew last year. And there does seem to be this wave of a younger generation that is really getting into sewing or refashioning, like upcycling, things like that. And so I'm really excited to see that. And I would love to think that we could actually make a big impact. But I realistically, I don't know. From what I see in documentaries, and you see like the mounds of clothing in Ghana and the markets and all of this, it just is a bit mind-boggling. And so I don't know. I don't know the scale that I don't know the answer for how this problem is going to be solved. But I think at least it's an option for people. And the more younger generation get into it and bring it back, I think the better, and the more options that people will have.
Definitely. I think also there's the educational piece as well. And I think the more people learn about it from lovely people like you, hopefully that kind of the message will sink in. But I agree with you. It's like, what is the answer to this? Before we wrap up, you've been so hugely successful in your multiple business endeavors. Me and Lucy find you so inspirational. Is there any advice or wisdom you would want to give to those either going into fashion or going it alone? Because obviously you've got your own fashion label as well. You've got Sewing in the City. What advice would you give?
Yeah, well, I think I have maybe two pieces of advice. I think one is if someone is starting out in the corporate fashion world, which I think for me was an amazing career. Like my career in fashion allowed me to be independent, pay my own bills, live alone in an apartment, travel. And it was really a great experience. And I learned a lot about business that I've been able to use in my own business. But I think one of the things that allowed me to kind of move up the ladder rather quickly was being able to say yes to an opportunity, even though, like, for example, I would have the opportunity to take on more responsibility, and the company wouldn't necessarily pay me at the level that they could pay someone if they brought someone in to do that job. But for me, I would do that job for a short amount of time, get the experience, and then move on to a different role, to a different company that would then pay me. Whereas a lot of people that I was working side by side with would say, like, why are you doing that? They're not even paying you, blah, blah, blah. But it was like just doing it for the experience for a short amount of time, just like get in, kind of learn the role, and then move on. So I never said no to more responsibility, because that's what allowed me to do more and ultimately move into different roles that were more exciting for me. So it seems a little counterintuitive, but
I totally see what you're saying. I think so. I know what you mean by saying it's counterintuitive, but either way, it's a win-win. I think you either get that experience and you can move on to something else, get paid more, or you kind of wait and that's not a win because you're like, I'm not getting the experience and they're not paying me more. So I think taking that next step and grabbing that onto that experience is really, really great advice. Obviously, we always have to wrap up by asking, is it really that deep? People love to call fashion frivolous, but it's been a constant thread in your life. What would you say to someone who sees it as just clothes?
I've heard different stories of people that I had worked with whose parents would say, like, when are you going to get a real job? Because they're working in fashion. It's a $1 billion industry. And from working in fashion, I've been able to launch into my own businesses doing exactly what I love. So I would say try an experiment. Wear your sweats, or wear, like I kind of think of like my dog walking outfits that are just super, throw on, run out the door just to get the dog outside. Wear that to, let's say a coffee shop or a department store, and then go back another time and wear something that you feel really put together in, a dress with earrings, or, whatever it is that makes you feel really put together, and just experience, how does that feel? And how do people respond to you? And I think that is a great test, just to say, like, how it may seem shallow on a certain level, but ultimately it's like how we express ourselves in the world and how good that feels, and the impact that we can make feeling good about ourselves to all the people we interact with.
I totally agree. It's a poise, it's a posture thing. I think, when it is that dress for success mentality in a certain way of when you've got an outfit on that makes you feel good and you feel like it's a good representation of yourself, it does give you that confidence. I strongly believe that.
Yeah, I think it's also like when it's the same thing when I've put an outfit on, or if I'm eating well, or if I'm exercising, or if I'm looking after my body and I'm dressing nicely, it reflects in how I feel daily and how I perform at work and how I show up for my friends and my family. And I think, there's a lot of things in this world that are, quite damning and quite depressing and can get people down. But I think if you can do these steps to just, make those daily habits a little bit nicer and make yourself feel a bit more confident, then you can attack anything and do anything with your life, really. So I think that's a really lovely point to just like kind of round the episode up on.
I love it. I love how you mentioned it along with eating well and, taking care of yourself, going to Pilates and doing these things that maybe they're not the easiest things to do on a daily basis, but you make the effort because there's some kind of payback that you're getting, like it enriches your life in some way. And I think as frivolous as it can seem, getting dressed and feeling good about how you present yourself, really, it's not to be dismissed as something, frivolous. So
absolutely is that deep. Thank you so much, Christine. This has been just such a joy. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And now it's time for...
And what a pile of bollocks!
This is the time in the show where we talk about something really insignificant that just pisses us off. And because we have a lovely guest, Christine, it is your turn to take the floor. So what is your what a pile of bollocks today?
Oh my goodness, it is something that is so annoying. And it might be a little bit of the New Yorker that's still kind of held over in me, but I cannot stand it when I'm walking on the sidewalk and people walk so slow and you can't get around them. Oh my goodness. And I hate to be that girl that's like, I'm not brave enough to be, or like, I'm polite that I don't want to like say anything, like, I'll just like politely wait behind them, like, oh, go.
Don't worry, you're speaking to Londoners. Like we're both Londoners. We've been there. I'm the most impatient person on that tube platform. If I get off the train and someone is standing there looking around, looking wet, I'm like, you just walk, you walk fast. And I just don't understand how people don't have an awareness of the space around them, because I'm always constantly aware of people behind me, to the side of me, and to the front of me. So I feel like I never have that thing of someone breathing down my neck, like, please move.
Exactly.
I feel like it never leaves you either. Like, I think when you've done London, you're on the go, you're fast paced, and like I definitely have slowed down a lot since being in Sydney. But you are not the first walking what a pile of bollocks we've had, and I don't think you're gonna be the last. It is so annoying.
So annoying. Yes. Oh my goodness. It's like, let's go.
Thanks so much for listening to Shallow. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could leave us a review. It makes a really huge difference in helping others discover the podcast. We always want to hear from you, so feel free to slide into our DMs, send us a bell, or follow us on Instagram at ShallowPod. Shallow is a boxed off production, written and hosted by Lucy Bell and Phoebe Whittle. We'll see you next time.